honour. Let's talk about honour today. Honour was the thing that drove the Old Norse to do the things they did that we remember them for. And that is the violence and the raiding and the seizing and the kidnapping and pillaging of people so they became wealthy and they could increase their reputation, and what their name meant. So, as I say, honour was incredibly important. When you woke up in the morning in your town on the coast of Norway, for example, you were in constant thought about what you could do to improve your name, to be a better person in the eyes of everyone. And because honour was so important, it was actually tied to fate, which was an inherent belief within the Norse that their lives were fated, such that when someone was born, the Norns would write down when they would die on the roots of the Yggdrasil, and when that time came, you would die. And so they had a belief that you shouldn't sit at home waiting for death. You should go out and you should fight and you should raid, and nothing's going to happen to you until the day it's going to happen to you anyway. And that drove a lot of their behaviours. That drove them to have the attitude that they could do that. And so today I'm going to tell you a story about honour and the difference between being dishonourable and honourable and why it meant so much. You see, to break into someone's house at night and to steal some money and run away, that was considered dishonourable. That was underhand, mischievous. Where if you went up to someone's front door and you knocked on the front door and waved an axe at them and said, "I want your gold," and if they didn't give it to you, you attacked them and then took their gold, that was considered honourable. And they say that was driven partly because of their belief in fate, that they're not going to die if it isn't their time, and because they needed to have that reputation. And that reputation was important because of when you died, you wanted your name to live on. Whilst the Norse didn't believe in souls as such, so when your body died, it didn't have a soul or spirit that floated off. Your body went to wherever it was going, whether that be hell or Valhalla or even somewhere else. Your body had a number of component parts, and one of those was around that reputation, that honour, and that meant that if your body had a chance to live again, and that part of you, then that would be more likely if you had a better name and you had more honour associated with it. So let me tell you a story of Egil. It's from the sagas of the Icelanders, and it's one particular chapter in that book, and it explains precisely why honour is important, or how honour drove behaviours within raiding. So welcome to a story of Egil and honour, and welcome to Krakenford. So when summer came, the Norsemen needed to raid, something we call a Viking. So a Viking is a verb meaning to raid. It isn't the name of a person or a type of person. So no one is a Viking, but people go a Viking. So just in case you've got a t-shirt saying I'm a Viking, probably not true. Now, what happened was Egil, he had a group of men with him, and they went on their boat and they went off to someone called Kurland, which is known today as Finland, the coast of Finland. And he went raiding there, and it was very sporadic. He stopped off at various places where he saw fit. There wasn't much resistance, and he plundered away. Got some valuables with his men, but not a lot. And when midsummer came, what he had to do, he arranged a truce with the villagers around, and they traded with them, which seems quite a weird thing to do. Once you've raided people, you then trade with them, but that's what he did. And then when he got his supplies together, he then went raiding again. And this one story starts where he sees a wooded area leading up into the hills, and moor the boats and go to shore, and he and his men split up into parties of 12, and Egil's party goes off into the woods and eventually comes across a farmstead, large farmhouse, a number of outbuildings, a number of different little cottages around, and he and his men went around looking at each of those places to try and find valuables. And they found a few things, but they spent a long time there, but there was no one else really around. So night time came, and they didn't realise it because time passed quickly as they were searching buildings, and they heard the horn of their ship that tells them to go back. And so they left the buildings and headed back to the woods so they could go to their boat. But then they noticed a large group of men, some Curlanders, waiting for them. And obviously they'd been planning this, these Curlanders, having known the raids, they were waiting for men to raid and capture them, or that was their hope. So to avoid this, Egil tried to run around the farmhouse with his men, and they would have had stockades, high fence stockades, and he ran around there, and apparently as he ran around the stockade to hide around the back of the farm, there was another stockade fence forcing him a particular way, and eventually they found themselves trapped in a high fence stockade, and the men, that included the farmer of this place, well, just trapped them. They had spears and swords and were poking them through the fence of the stockade, and eventually Egil and his men had to surrender. And they got a bit beaten up, and then the farmer said to his son, "Son, should we kill these people now?" And his son said, "No, let's wait until the morning when it's light and we can see their faces when we torture them, when we kill them." And so they tied up Egil and his men in the barn. And Egil had his wrists tied and his ankles tied, and he was tied to a post so he couldn't move. And the farmer and his son and all the other men that was with the farmer went into the main farmhouse, and they parted and they drank and they sang songs, and Egil and his men could hear this happening. But Egil thought it wasn't his time to die, not today, not tomorrow. And so he shook at the pole, even though his hands and legs were tied. He shook at the pole, and he shook and he shook and he shook, and the pole eventually wiggled loose and fell, and he managed to slide off that pole, and using his teeth he unbound his hands, and then he could unbound his feet, and he set free all his men. But they were stuck in this barn, they couldn't get out. 3 walls were built of logs, strong sort of tree trunks in effect. They couldn't barge through those. Only one wall had planks, so they barged that, and eventually they broke that down, but found themselves in another barn with log walls. They could break that down, and they looked around and found on the floor a hatch, and they opened it up and they shouted, "Is anybody there?" And they heard the voice of some other men, and they helped them up, and these men happened to be Danes, and they were a Viking the previous year, and they'd been caught and they'd been forced to work as slaves on the farm. So Egil asked them, "Are there any treasures around, and how do we get out of here?" And they were happy to help. They said, "Oh, you've got to break down this wall." And yes, there are treasures in buildings, this particular building especially. And so Egil and his men and these Danes, they broke down the right wall of the barn to get out, and they found the treasures in the outhouses, and they ran back into the woods. And there Egil stopped, and he said, "Stop, I can't do this." And his men were like, "What are you talking about?" He says, "I can't do this. We've just been very dishonourable. We've just taken stuff from the farmer. And he doesn't know. We are stealing. That isn't right. I'm going to go back and put this right." And his men are going, "That's a really daft thing to do. I mean, they've caught us. There's loads of them." He said, "No, I'm going to do this." And so Egil goes back to the farm. And there he watches, and he sees that whilst they're feasting, there's servants going in and out of the kitchen where they're cooking food with plates and that. And he runs into the kitchen with his axe, and he kills all the cooks, all the servants, and he takes logs from the fire. And with these logs he goes to the farmhouse, and he shoves logs into the roof, into the rafters, which you can see, and he puts logs in front of the doorway out. And then he waits. And the fire takes hold of the roof, and the first thing the people inside know is the smoke and the flames, and they see that and they try and get out the house. They open the door and they see these logs in the way again flaming, and they try and climb over them, and as they climb over them, Egil shouts, "I am Egil, and I am stealing your treasure, and I was the one who took your life," and he hacked them down with his axe, and he killed everybody who came out of that building. The ones that didn't make it out, well, the roof eventually collapsed, and that was the end of them. Egil made it back to the woods and saw his friends. He said, "The job is done." They knew who raided them, they knew who took their valuables, they knew who killed them. And he picked up his treasure, and he and his men went back to the ship. And that story explains honour driving Egil to make the decision not to steal, but to actually seize those goods, to behave in that way, and to act like a Drenga, act like a sort of a legend, a badass, a man you would not argue with. And that's something he didn't ask for people to call him that. He committed deeds, and because those deeds were seen as amazing and outstanding, his men called him that. And so that's a story of honour that the Old Norse used to drive their day-to-day life, and understanding of how it combines with fate and how it combines with their life as a whole, and how they wanted their name to carry on. So I hope you enjoyed that little journey, and you're safe and well. There'll be more videos soon, and when the weather's nice, I'll go out and do a special 1000 subscriber special, so I can give away some t-shirts, hopefully video something that is in focus rather than out of focus, because I'm having technical issues with that. But hey ho, but thanks for all your support so far. Please like the video, please subscribe to the channel if you're not, it means a lot. It doesn't cost anything, and you get to see all the other videos we've made. So until the next videos, stay safe and stay well, take care, and this was Krakenford.